podcast brought to you by Private Property. My name is Noemdoe once again, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Today we're talking about the role that media plays in agriculture. And I think that's such a critical one because for individuals that are not in the agricultural sector, you rely a lot on media in terms of what they report, the farmer stories that they profile, just to learn and gain insights about what opportunities and challenges exist for farmers in the sector, as well as other information relating to food prices, sustainability, climate change, drought, global warming, the list goes on and on. And our guest tonight is none other than Noemdoe, who is the editor at Food for Mzansi, which is a digital publication, and they also have their podcast called The Farmer's Inside Track. And I don't know if you are familiar with Food for Mzansi, but they are one of the leading publications within agriculture, and they profile phenomenal stories about farmers, industry experts, about food prices, what's happening in government, what's happening in the sector. And I feel like there's such a dynamic team that is literally on the ground. And I can definitely say one publication that is definitely a farmer's friend. I'm so happy to be joined by you, Dawn. How are you doing this evening?
It's great to be with you, Mbali, and I'm so happy to be part of this platform.
Likewise, I know I've been trying to get you onto the podcast for quite some time, and you've been very busy, understandably so, because I feel like there's been so much happening in the sector, and with the global pandemic, with the ease of restrictions time and time again. And so, yeah, I'm happy to have you on board. But we were just talking behind the scenes about your title within Food for Mzansi. And I think it's just quite a creative one. If you could just tell the audience what that title is and what exactly is it that you do within the Food for Mzansi publication.
So I'm the editor for audience and engagement at Food for Mzansi. And I think that my role specifically is around steering the content that we produce on a daily basis, understanding the audience and what their needs are and how best we serve them. And I'm specifically predominantly working currently on the Farmers Inside Track channel that you mentioned previously. So I basically run the podcast and newsletter content that goes out on a weekly basis. And I'm also in charge of all of our newsletter content that goes out on a weekly basis. So we have 4 active newsletters. Besides Farmers Inside Track, we also have an Mzansi flavor newsletter that goes out every Monday. We have a daily newsletter that's called Mzansi Today that goes out. We also have Stories of Change newsletter, and that's more towards a one specific audience that we serve, but I'll talk more about our audiences later in the show. And then we also have Stories of Change. It's Farmers Inside Track, Mzansi Today, and Mzansi flavor. So I basically have, if you wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning in Bali, I can tell you about our audience and what their needs are and why we service them and what we offer them. So yeah, that's my role, and more specifically now currently building our Farmers Inside Track audience.
When did Food for Mzansi start? And let's talk about the audience. Who are you talking to? What are the demographics like?
So some might say that Food for Mzansi is almost like the new kids on the block, because we haven't been around for that long. It's only been 3 years, it was started by award-winning journalist Ivor Price and Cobus Lawrence that I know have also been featured on this platform with you, and so they had this dream. Ivor had the show going on where he was traveling to different parts of the country. And he realized that what he was seeing on the ground and his experience about what the country's farmers looked like and what they do is not what was being portrayed in the media. And so he felt that there was some kind of disconnect. And then between himself and Cobus, they have about more than 20 years experience in journalism. And they then decided to start Food for Mzansi. So my journey started with them, like basically when they started. And I was just telling you earlier before we started that you're actually one of the first farmers that I met when I started at Food for Mzansi, and it's actually amazing to actually think about that. So before I actually cut my teeth in community media, community radio, and that's where my journey started. And up until I got into the agricultural space. And I've always had a natural curiosity and passion to tell the untold stories in the media, and now I'm doing it in the agricultural space. So the idea behind Food for Mzansi was initially to tell people where their food comes from. And we wanted people, when they had a drink of beer, when they were sitting down and having a burger, whether they had a salad for lunch, they had to understand that their food comes from somewhere. It didn't start and it didn't come from a shopping center or a shop. And there's lots of hard work that goes into it, lots of hard work, sweat, blood, and tears that goes into producing our food. And so that's basically what we had initially thought we would do. But then about a year or so into it, we realized that there were these farmers that started adopting us, that didn't see themselves in some of the more, older publications that have been around for hundreds of years. So they then found a home with Food for Mzansi. We sort of dubbed them the Middletons. They're not small enough. They're not small, but they're small enough, they're recognized in the industry, but they're not big enough for people to see them and for these publications to write about them. But for us, we just realized that no story is irrelevant. Whether you have 10 cows and 5 chickens, your story is important. And so that's what we aim to do. We wanted to showcase the diversity of the sector and how dynamic it is. And then from there on, these farmers adopted us. And that's when we decided that, hey, we need to start servicing them. And that's when Farmers Inside Track started. But now I'm trailing a bit, so ask your next question.
It's okay, because we love to get information, and understand exactly what Food for Mzansi does. But I wanted to know, who are you speaking to? Are you speaking to farmers like myself, young farmers under the age of 45? Are you speaking to an older demographic or generation of individuals? Is it only farmers? Is it now professionals? Is it graduates? Who is your audience at Food for Mzansi?
So we have 4 very clear audiences at Food for Mzansi. The first audience and the person that we talk to, her name is Noemdoe. So Noemdoe is a city dweller. She is very much interested in agriculture, although she's not directly involved. But she sees agriculture as a viable option for her children to go into, and she encourages her family and friends to get involved in the sector. She's also a very conscious eater, so she wants to know about where her food comes from. She wants to know where the produce, what is the value chain, how do these farmers treat their workers. And she's also very much involved in issues around land reform and the debates around that. So that's Noemdoe. Noemdoe's between the age of 25 to 35. She's a city dweller, but she has connection to her rural background. And so that's the one audience. And for Noemdoe, we give anything from recipes to cook during the week to thought leadership content around what's happening around land reform. She's also very much interested in sharing information about how to start farming with her family members. So that's the type of content that we create for her. The lifestyle content, the food prices. She wants to know why she's spending so much money on potatoes and garlic, So that's how we cater for her. And then the next character or avatar, as we call them, is actually called Mbali. And it's not you, I promise. So then it's Mbali. So Mbali is a young agriculturalist. She is very much passionate about the sector. She's most likely a first-generation farmer. I'm describing you. And she's definitely interested in what is the latest technology, how does she improve her practices on her farm, how does she access information about what people are doing or what farmers are doing in the rest of the world. And she's very much conscious about the people that she employs and their well-being, and whether or not they get out of whether or not they
that is me.
I guess it's you and Bali. And then and so that's our so what we offer her is how to improve her business. We give her financial advice. We offer her information about where to access the latest funding, how to get land. That is the type of content that we put together for her. And this farmer is hungry for information. She's constantly trying to find a place where she can access this kind of information. And that's what Food for Mzansi tries to offer her on a daily basis. And then, surprisingly enough, we have another avatar that surprised us so much. His name is Tians. Now, this is a white 30-something farmer, most likely third or fourth generation. But he feels a bit out of place because his parents and grandparents don't think the way he does. Like Mbali, he's also very much thinking differently about how the people that work with him on the farm live and what they get at the end of the day. He's worried about what will happen when his children chooses to farm. So he's very much focused on regenerative farming, also very much involved in agri-tech and agri-innovation and these alternative crops, and whether or not saffron is something that he should go into, cannabis farming. You know, he wants to push that. So he also doesn't feel that he's quite set in how his grandparents and parents used to do it. So he's a bit of an outsider. So he also comes to us for information, and he wants to connect with Mbali because that also is frowned upon sometimes, wanting to work with other farmers in the sector, and specifically Black farmers in the sector. Okay, and then our next and last avatar is Milani. Now, Milani is a white young agriculturalist, but her family believes that she shouldn't even be interested in farming. She should much rather go and take a husband and find an administration or finance job. But she's lived on the farm her entire life, and she is in love with farming. And so she will most likely not get the land from her parents because either her older brother got it. And so she's also a bit, she doesn't know where to find herself. So she also comes to Food for Mzansi for information. She comes to Food for Mzansi to make new partnerships and build new relationships with other farmers in the sector. So yeah, those are our avatars and how we service them on a daily basis.
Wow, interesting to know all the different characters, what who you're speaking to. And it's also great to know that you've got all these regular newsletters that is constantly feeding us information, the current trends, the latest news that is happening in the country. But talking on that news and the role that media plays in agriculture, how important is it for Food from Mzansi to deliver on the ground or groundbreaking news that is pertinent for farmers as well as agri cooperatives or organizations, I suppose the sector as a whole, but how important is it for Food for Mzansi to really bring on the ground direct and accurate news to the agricultural community?
I think, Mbali, maybe if I can take a step back, I think I mentioned in the beginning, we were mostly focused on telling these positive stories about the dynamics of the industry, and stuff that people weren't talking about. And so that's how we started. But then, when was it? The beginning of lockdown last year, everyone had to go into their homes. Most of these agricultural publications and other publications had to close shop. And we were the only ones around that had to offer information to farmers about what was happening in the sector. And so we basically did a 360. We basically turned our strategy around. So we went from feel-good, positive news to finding, accessing and giving information about news and what was happening in the industry to our farmers. So from that, then we decided that, hey, we can actually play this news game as well. And so we've basically over the past year built up a very strong team of news journalists that are on the ground finding information and offering farmers access to this information on a daily basis. So in our daily editorial meetings, they come with content suggestions, whether it's about the blended finance program, whether it's about the Motsepe fund that didn't give the money. We think that it's important that our farmers have access to this information. And surprisingly enough, Mbali, farmers are approaching us. People are saying to us, hey, what's happening? Have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? And so we feel very proud that is happening, because in the beginning it was quite tough for us to change the strategy and to change our role as a big agri-news media player as well, and not just predominantly focused on lifestyle content.
So you didn't come already from a farming background in terms of your career. You're 3 years now in the game. What are some of the positive stories that you've heard about the agriculture industry? And what are some of the negative stories that you really thought, I wish I could change this?
Yeah, I think Food for Mzansi definitely is up. Okay, let me start that again. Food for Mzansi definitely takes a heart-centered approach as a brand in terms of its offering in terms of news and profile stories, and so we also naively believe that agriculture really has a power to create social cohesion in this beautiful country. And so, despite the doom and gloom, there's not a day that goes by that we don't post a positive story of an agriculturalist or a farmer that is doing the most, that just goes above and beyond what they need to do. So I think for me, there are so many stories that we published, but there's this one story about a 72-year-old blind gardener. I think he's busy in Delft, Khayelitsha, and in Delft, in the northern suburbs. And this man lost his job, he lost his eyesight, but he just decided, you know what, I can do this gardening thing and I can make it work. And so he decided that this is how he's going to do it. And now he's feeding his community, he's feeding himself, and he's encouraging young people in the area to do the same. And there's hundreds of these stories that we publish on a daily basis. Some of the more negative stories, I'd say, is the amount of abuse that women sometimes encounter on farms. And they are afraid to speak out. They don't talk about it. They refuse to report cases. They don't even talk about it. And so that's more of the, sadder things that I think that happens on farms. And accessing sanitation is also one of the bigger things for me. Women working in fields that don't have access to proper sanitation when they're out there. And that is also some of the bigger things that really breaks my heart within the sector. So I think I'm appreciative of the fact that people are innovative and they don't sit around and wait for people, but I think there's still a lot to be done, especially around women in the sector, because they've played such a big role in the industry and they continue to play a big role globally, but they are often overlooked.
Ooh. Wow, that is quite sad to hear. And I think we shouldn't forget, some of the negative things that happen on farms, like you said, whether it's lack of sanitation, lack of housing, transportation from farm workers from one point to the next. But that's quite sad to hear. I just want to encourage all the audience watching to this live to please ask us any questions. We are talking about the role that media plays in agriculture, and we have editor for farmers for Food from Mzansi, apologies. We have the editor for Food from Mzansi, Dawn Noemdoe, who I'm speaking to today. Dawn, I want to find out as well, how has the global pandemic affected or impacted your ability to share and spread news across the country? You mentioned that, farmers have even now reached out to you and said, hey, have you seen what's happening, on the ground? But I'm sure before lockdown, life was fantastic, where you could travel and see the farms, take pictures of farmers on their farms, really get the full sense of the story live and direct from the horse's mouth. So how has that changed for you in these past couple of months since you've been on lockdown?
I must say, lockdown, I know many people out there lost their jobs, really suffering, but it actually, because we're a digital platform, we did really well. From the word go, we were able to continue our work. I don't think we didn't stop for 1 second. The same way Farmers was going on and doing their thing, Food for Mzansi was there with you. And so with the support of our digital partner, Yay Baby, we were able to still continue with the work that we were doing on a daily basis. And so when people wanted information and needed to access information, we were there for them. So in the beginning, we actually hosted a number of webinars around the agricultural sector. And so we became a digital home for many farmers and a place for them to engage and interact and access information. So yes, it was difficult because we were isolated, but in terms of continuing with the work that we were doing, we didn't stop. And we actually grew much bigger because we're a digital platform.
Yeah, you definitely indeed are a big, small publication.
Yes.
I haven't been around for 3 years. I follow Food from Mzansi quite often, and I've seen that you've won quite a number of awards or been recognized by a number of media houses. Tell us about your achievements since Food from Mzansi has been birthed.
Yeah. So I think we were quite surprised in Bali when that first year we were recognized by WAN-EFRA, which is the global organization of World Press. So Food for Mzansi was actually announced as Africa's best digital startup in 2019. And we literally had to pinch ourselves. It was something like, you should see us in those pictures, because actually, Ivan Kobos, I'm not sure if they mentioned this, but they didn't even dress up for the awards. Ivan was just wearing a shirt. And then when they announced us, they called me, and all I did was scream over the phone because we couldn't believe it, because we had literally just started and we were being announced as Africa's best digital news startup. So that was one of the awards that we won. We also won runner-up for best social media engagement in that award as well. And then in September last year, Food for Mzansi also competed on the global stage during the 72nd World News Media Conference that was held in Spain. And another achievement that we're very proud of is that Food for Mzansi was handpicked as just one of 2 South African media organizations that was selected to be part of the Google News Initiative's Innovation Challenge. And we competed it was for Africa, Turkey, and the Middle East. So through that program, we were able to launch our Sinilizwe Citizen Journalist project that is focused on training up citizen journalists to be able to report on things happening in their communities. And from that group, we actually now in the last few weeks of it, we will be selecting 3 of our top performers. There was about a group of 60, and 3 of those top performers are then going to be chosen to become permanent freelance writers for Food for Mzansi. So that was one of the things that really stood out for us over the past 3 years.
Wow. And in closing, Dawn, you mentioned that, you weren't in the agricultural sector. You were a journalist before, also working in radio, in broadcasting before, but nothing to do with agriculture. And what advice would you give for people seeking careers in the agricultural sector? Would you say that people should follow their passions, or does the sector have enough room for different professions to take advantage of? But what advice would you leave us with tonight with individuals looking to pursue careers in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, no, I think there's more than enough room, Umbali. The list is endless. I think when we also have this really amazing agri careers platform that we had to do virtually last year, but in the first year that we did it, Food for Mzansi was basically showcasing the number of careers that's available within the sector, and I mean there's from A to Z. You name it, you'll find it. And I think maybe what people should also realize that although, it's not just about getting sweaty and working the land. I work in the agricultural sector and I work in media, and it's really exciting. And I fell in love with it, and I don't think I'll ever stop working in the sector, even if I move. But I definitely fell in love with it, and that's one way. I mean, working in social media, our partners here, baby, my colleague working in content creation. I mean, we have TikTok farmers now. So to all the young people that are TikTok crazy, there's even TikTok farmers sharing advice on TikTok. So I think the list is endless, whether you want to become an agronomist, whether you want to become a bookkeeper, whether you want to work in banking. The list is really endless for finding a space for you to work in the agricultural sector. Recently, we featured a drone pilot on our Farmers Inside Track platform. So I think with the new technology and the new niche crops that's coming through, saffron farming, I mean, that's really exciting at the moment. Cannabis farming, I mean, there's so many options. And I think that the list is definitely endless when it comes to choosing a career within the agricultural sector. And then maybe just in closing, I'd also like to say that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, I was seriously amazed by the selfless support that the agricultural community gave to South Africans. I mean, people sending truckloads of food, and I don't think we give them enough recognition. We don't give you enough recognition for the work that you do every day in Bali. So I think that's definitely something that we should continue to do. And when you pray for your food, pray for the farmer. So I think that's really important, because without them, you won't be able to eat. So yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you for that. When you pray for your food, pray for the farmer, because without farmers, you won't be able to eat, you won't have clothing, you won't have medicine. There's so many things that agriculture plays in so many other sectors. But thank you so much for your time, Dawn. It was very lovely chatting to you. And congratulations with all the milestones that Food from Mzansi has achieved in just 3 years. My gosh, I'm really proud of you guys and the team, Ivor Corbus, and the extended team as well, that we don't usually see often, but I know that they're behind the scenes, because they always nudge me to say, Mbali, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah.
It's always wonderful to converse with you guys, and congratulations with the work that you're doing, and keep it up. Keep highlighting these positive stories about farmers in our region, and maybe you could just become one of the most preferred African publications. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mbali, and I echo that, and I take all of that positive energy.
That was Dawn Noemdoe from Food from Mzansi. She's the editor at Food from Mzansi. And as we heard, it's a digital publication that's been around for 3 years. And they've been able to grab all these wonderful achievements and milestones in the agri sector, specifically in media. And if you haven't checked out Food from Mzansi, Google them, trust me, you will find them. You'll get to read about all the farmers that they profile. They have tips that they share about the agricultural industry, whether you want to farm, whether you're looking for a specific career in farming. As you heard, they do have an agri careers platform as well. So be sure to check out Food from Mzansi and listen to their podcast, because they bring some refreshing news on a weekly basis. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. I look forward to seeing you once again. Otherwise, from me tonight, I want to bid you a good weekend ahead, and I will see you shortly. Have a good night, and God bless.